Welcome back to the Run the World podcast, episode 6.
Yeah! Happy New Year!
Happy New Year.
Yep, we are also recording this at the start of the new year too, and maybe you'll notice a difference in the quality, but we have a new camera and new mics, so that is really awesome.
Yeah, if it's not perfect yet, it probably will be, because we got the right quality stuff from my brother, who's a genius, Brett.
Shout out to Brett.
Shout out to Brett. We love the shout-outs. So yeah, hopefully, if it doesn't work out this week completely right, which hopefully it will, but if not, long term, this will be a better solution. Also notice we are in this spaceship of a basement right now, filming this, because no matter where we go, we want to make this podcast happen.
Exactly. So right now we are in Virginia, which is where Drew's family is, and we are just hanging out with them for the new year, and it's been super fun. So yeah, that's what we're up to right now, and we're, like we said, in the spaceship. There's some gym equipment back there. Drew's done some benching back here. So yeah, it's been a fun couple of weeks for sure.
Yeah. So we're going to jump right into it. Today's conversation is going to be revolving around the 5K distance. We thought this would be kind of a relatable distance to a lot of people, because whether you've run one or not, you're probably within shooting range of running one at some point or have done already. So we're going to be talking all about the different training perspectives, what it looks like going from couch to 5K as like a beginner runner, more intermediate, and then advanced and beyond, and even talking about workouts and stuff like that.
Yeah, definitely. So we can just jump right into it and start talking about beginner 5K training and what it's like to 5K train as just a beginner runner. And this is someone who doesn't really have experience running at all, and just wants to get into it. You might not know that much about running. You might think, I don't even know how to even start training for one of these. So we want to help you out, and then later we'll get into more of the medium and advanced 5K training. So you can skip ahead. We'll do timestamps at the bottom. If you're more of a someone who's trying to PR in a 5K, you can skip ahead to the medium or advanced training.
Yeah, and we'll first talk briefly about where we have been with our own 5Ks, so you kind of know like our perspective and skill level really quickly, and then we'll jump into the beginner.
Yeah. So Drew, what was your first 5K, or what is your 5K progression like?
Yeah, I was more of a beginner in the sense of I hadn't run much. My first 5K, my first like legit 5K after college, I ran like a 24-minute 5K, which might be good to some of you, might be terrible to some of you. I, at the time, was like heavy, over 200 pounds, only lifting, not really running. So to me, a 24 felt good, but also felt terrible in the sense I was dying at the end of it. It seemed like a long distance race. Like it seemed like a marathon in my mind.
Yeah.
And over the years, over like 3 years of training, I went down from a 24 to a 17:34, which is what my current PR is. And I did that almost a year to the date. I did it in a New Year's race here in Virginia last year. And I was happy with that performance. It was good. I would say that's not like my true PR because I haven't raced a 5K in the last year.
Yeah.
It'd definitely be faster than that. So I don't know. Maybe I'll do a 5K in the future and you can guess what I'll do. But that's where I'm at.
Yeah, that was a fun 5K race. Drew was flying at the end. He had a really, really awesome kick. And there were people, he had the red beard like he does now, and there were people standing by the finish line being like, and it's Redbeard coming in for the win. And it was just really fun to watch. So, yeah. Great 5K PR.
How about you?
Yeah.
You've had a lot longer of a progression, probably.
I have, yeah. So right now, I haven't raced a 5K in a little bit just because I've been in the trails, training and racing and stuff like that. But my very first 5K ever was with my dad when I was probably in 4th grade or something like that. It was actually my first race. I did a 5K, and yeah, just a fun road run with my dad. And I already knew that I loved running, so it was just kind of a fun intro into running for me. So that was my very first 5K. And then in Texas, I did cross country and track growing up, and I since I lived in Texas, we didn't have the 5K as an event for girls in the state of Texas. So all of our state meets and stuff were actually 2-mile races for cross country. And then we went up to the 2-mile and track as well. So I didn't get to race as many 5Ks in high school as I would have if I were able to run now when they are doing 5Ks for girls. But I did get to race a few 5Ks when I was in high school because the national meets like Foot Locker Nationals and Nike Nationals were all 5Ks. So I got to race 5Ks at nationals and like postseason races and stuff like that. But it was more focused on kind of the 2-mile when I was growing up in Texas. And then I went to college at Baylor and I raced the steeplechase and 5K to 10K there. So I did a lot more 5Ks when I was in college and got down to 15:39 for my 5K PR. And I actually ended up being second in the NCAA Division I indoor national championship. So that was my highest finish actually ever. I never won an NCAA title, but I came in second and it was in the 5K in indoor season. So yeah.
So we're pretty much the same level.
So exact same level for sure. Yeah. But yeah, I think when I think about 5K training, I think that you need to know yourself when you're deciding like what distance to race and what kind of training to do. And so for me, like myself, when I was young, I could just take off running and my endurance was great and it was just easy for me to run 3 miles. But I know plenty of other people who that is not their strong suit. Their strong suit is like being in the gym and lifting or strength or something that's not endurance based at all, and running 3.1 miles to them feels like this huge challenge, which it is a big challenge if you're not used to that kind of training and that kind of endurance. So I think it's really important just to know yourself and start off with beginner training if you need the beginner training, and then start off with more of the medium training if you are better at the endurance stuff.
Great. Yeah, and that's where we're going to get into these different types of training blocks. And I think she makes a good point of know yourself, because if you hear us talking about this beginner level and you're like, I've run before, like I ran in high school, or like I run like just for fun, maybe this doesn't apply to you. Maybe like skip that part of the video and go to the medium training. Yeah. There's no harm, no foul. And if you're like, I'm even slower than this, again, no harm, no foul. We're all in our different fitness journeys. Just be honest with where you're at, because that will be what will be most helpful for you. And I think anyone can get to running a 5K without stopping, running a 5K that they're proud of, that they can leave their mark on that race and be like, that was an awesome race. So it doesn't matter who you are. You can get there.
And I think that's the fun thing about the 5K. And some adults that I know that get into running, I think automatically think, I need to run marathons because that's the big thing and that's what everyone's doing. And I feel like a lot of adults miss out on awesome opportunities to get faster in the 5K, or maybe they're just better at speed and better at shorter races like that. And it would be more fun for you to try to PR in the 5K. So again, know yourself. And if the 5K is really fun for you, or if that's like a good challenge for you, do that instead of trying to hop into a marathon or a half marathon. And I would even say too, if you're really new to running, the 5K is the place to start. Don't go from couch to marathon, because that is very overwhelming and that is a huge distance. Go from couch to 5K first. So, yeah.
That's where you start. So, what does it look like? What would you're a coach, if you had a runner right now who's like, I'm not a runner at all, I literally am trying to go couch to 5K, what would you suggest to them? What's like a realistic amount of time that it would take to go through training so that they could run for 3.11 miles, the 5K distance?
Yeah, it's actually funny because I just got an athlete the other week this is their exact situation.
Perfect.
And so it is perfect. Yeah, and we're training, he wants to do a 6K by June. And so it's a little bit over 5K, but anyway, 6K by June. But I think to really go from kind of couch to 5K, if you've had no background in running at all, I think probably about 3 months is what you would want to be able to train up to that and kind of slowly add in running. Because if you add in too much too soon, there's a big chance that you can get injured or just burn out. So if you're really wanting to start and you're super excited about running, keep that excitement, but also pace yourself. Like in a 5K or marathon or any distance race, you need to pace yourself so that you can run a good pace through the whole race instead of running too fast at the start and then burning out and having to walk at the end. And it's the same thing with training too. Don't go so hard where you're like, I'm gonna run like 3 miles today, if that's not really where you're at.
Yeah, exactly. Take your time.
Yeah.
Now, some people might think, okay, 3 months of training, that seems like a lot of running just to run for 3 miles. Would you say that, like, in a given week, are you running every day of the week to get to that goal?
No, I would say if you're a beginner runner, you don't need to run every single day. I think 4 to 5 days a week doing some type of endurance training, whether that's running, it could be a combination of running, cycling, ellipticaling, even going out for walks. So there's a lot of different ways that you can throw some cross training into this as well to get your endurance up, but maybe you're not running every single day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You got to build that aerobic base, that engine, your heart, because if you're building cardio, you're building cardio.
Yeah.
And it will apply to the 5K.
For sure, yeah. And some people might be able to do this in 2 months, but I'm saying 3 months is probably like the most amount of time that you would need to really build up to this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So I think the way that I would do this, the kind of workouts that I would do and stuff like that, is I would start off with some walk runs where maybe you're running for, and really just jogging for like a minute, and then walking for 4 minutes, and doing that for 30 minutes at first. And just really starting off at the basics right then. And then add in run for 2 minutes and then walk for 3 minutes. And start just as you build your endurance, add a little bit more running sprinkled in with some walking too. And eventually build up to being able to run 3 miles all at once.
Totally. It's more digestible that way. It's easier to wrap your head around. Your body is like, okay, we can do this.
Yeah.
We might not be able to run a mile straight, but we can run and walk a mile straight.
Totally.
It's kind of like what you'll see in all of these plans is a consistent trend of these type of workouts. Like, this is the fancy runner name for a workout like this is a fartlek.
Yeah.
Which is just like speed play, pretty much, where you mix up different levels of speed so that you get used to running fast and you're building your aerobic base. So you'll see, even by the advanced stage of advanced runners, like Rachel will do training runs where she's running faster than 5K pace, and then she'll be jogging, and then faster for a minute, and then off for a minute, on for a minute, off. Every great runner does this, so it's not like it's so dumbed down for someone who's new to running. It's the same thing. It's just you have to know your own pace and your own like physical capabilities and just match it to that.
Yeah, and for someone who's totally new to running any pace might make your heart rate go up so much that it would be similar to an elite athlete who's doing an interval workout where they're doing 400s really, really fast. So if your heart rate is up really, really high, then the walking portion is for you to bring your heart rate down a little bit and then rev it back up once you recover.
Yeah, exactly. I know, something we've talked about kind of in a funny, joking way, but it's kind of honestly true, is like I have a lot of respect for the 5-hour, 6-hour marathon runner who's in pain, is in just as much pain as I am for 3 hours, and they're doing it for 5 or 6 hours.
Yeah.
It's equal. Like, I'm trying as hard as I can, they're trying as hard as they can. Kipchoge, who's running only 2 hours, is trying as hard as he can, but he only has to deal with the pain for 2 hours. We have to deal with it for hours longer than he does. So in some way, it's like the mental toughness is harder.
Yeah.
Like the slower you are. And it's kind of like not fair, but the faster you get, the more efficient you are, and then the easier those old paces that used to be impossible to hit, they become like your easy pace.
Yeah, totally. You can also do some good heart rate training with this too, and you can go online and search for heart rate calculators and know kind of the zones to be working out in, and so they go zone 1 through zone 5. So zone 1 is super, super easy, and then you get higher and higher and higher. So knowing some of those heart rate zones is a good way to kind of build up and know how to pace yourself for a 5K. So if you're in zone 4 or 5 while you're running the 5K, you probably went out a little bit too fast. I would think you kind of want to be probably in zone 3, at least at the start of a 5K.
Yeah, and that was one of my biggest hang-ups as a beginner runner. I used to take the first mile out way too fast.
Yeah.
And I think that's a pretty common problem. Would you say as a coach? Do you see that?
Totally, yeah.
Where you're like, oh, I gotta like go fast. And you don't realize if you're trying to run an 8-minute per mile 5K, like 8 minutes in 1 mile might feel really doable for you. Mm-hmm. Ideally it should if that's your goal for 3.11. So you kind of like the first mile of a 5K should kind of feel easy or like doable.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be like heart beating out of your chest about to hit a wall, because if you're at that point at mile 1, you're screwed.
Yeah, definitely.
So
yeah, you probably will be walking by the end. Yeah. And that's the other thing. I think some people, if they're beginners in running, they might get discouraged and they're like, I can't run 3 miles because you always go out so fast in the first mile. But if you slow down just a little bit, you could run for longer than you could if you are just going hard from the very, very start. But it's hard to learn how to pace yourself like that. I kind of like to break a 5K up into thirds and go mile by mile, because it's a little bit longer than 3 miles, so breaking it up into thirds, I can think about it and digest it mile by mile. The first mile, I want it to feel pretty smooth. I want it to feel pretty controlled. I don't want my breathing to be super, super heavy. The second mile, it's maybe getting harder, but it's more like a medium effort. And then the third mile is going to be hard, just because it's hard at the end of any race that you do, whether that's a half marathon or 5K. But it's okay. You'll build up the endurance to be able to keep pushing through that last mile, as long as you don't go out too fast in the first mile.
Totally. Great advice.
Yeah.
Sticking to it.
Awesome. Okay, well, let's move on to some medium training for someone that maybe is trying to PR in their first 5K.
Yeah, so maybe you've run a 5K. I'd say a lot of people who consider themselves runners have probably run a 5K. Maybe you run your local turkey trot or like New Year's Day 5K, something like that. Like, it's been fun. Maybe you barely made it through it, but you did. It's been fun. I think a lot of people can say that. And if you're there, maybe you're like, okay, I've done it. I've finished, but I want to go fast. Like, I want to beat the time I beat. Maybe you ran a 45 minutes and you want to break 40 in the 5K. Or you ran a 35 and you want to break 30. Whatever it might be. This is more medium. What are some of the obvious things, if you want to like PR in a already run 5K, what are some things you're going to need to start adding into your training programming?
Yeah, so I would start adding in actual speed workouts, like fartleks, like we were talking about earlier, or track workouts where you're doing intervals or threshold runs. So I would start, and if you've never done workouts like that in a week, I would just add 1 in a week, and that's really all that you need to do. And then the rest of your mileage is easy mileage, which means that you could run at a conversational pace where you're able to talk, just like we are the whole time that you're running.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
How much faster than their goal pace would you suggest? Like, for instance, if their goal 5K pace is 7 flat, which is pretty fast, what would be, how much faster than 7-minute pace would you suggest on those workout days where they're adding in speed?
Yeah, I wouldn't suggest that much faster than 5K pace if you're doing longer intervals. So I think you could be doing some workouts where you're doing maybe in and out 200s, where you're running a 200 fast and then running 200 meters easy. So you could do that type of workout and maybe work in some paces that are more like mile to 3K race pace for you, which maybe you know what that is exactly for you, maybe you don't. But if you know what your mile race pace is, then running some 200s where you're going 200 hard, 200 easy at your mile pace for the harder 200, that can be a really good workout. But you don't need to really go into top-notch just sprinting effort. And I would even say most of your interval and speed workout days should be more 5K pace training than you should be doing mile training or 3K paces and workouts.
So almost like you could do, if 7 minutes was your goal, you could do 7-minute pace, but instead of doing it for a mile, you could do 400s or 800 repeats at 7-minute pace.
Exactly. So yeah, I usually start off athletes by doing some threshold training at the very beginning, which threshold means an effort that you could keep up for about an hour. So I don't know exactly what it would be for a 7-minute pace 5K, but there's some great calculators online where you can put in your 5K PR or your mile PR, or maybe even your goal for that, and it'll show you the paces that you need to run for threshold or for intervals or for race pace. So I can link that in the description below so that you have that calculator too, but it's a really, really great tool for you to use while you're trying to calculate workout paces. So I would start off 5K training by just doing a lot of threshold workouts, which, like I said, it's a pace that you could keep up for an hour long, and maybe do 2 to 3 miles at that pace, and start working in, that's kind of the strength. And if you think of it like a house, you need a really, really good foundation to build a house. And that's what these threshold workouts are. So they're the base of the house, and what you're building that foundation on. You're building it on really good endurance. And then as you get closer and closer to the race, you can get more specific with the speed. So that's what I would do. Start off with threshold and then get more specific as you start getting towards the race. And I would say start with some shorter intervals like 400s at 5K pace. And then as you get closer and closer to the race, increase that distance. So then do 800s at that pace, do 1,000 meters at that pace, start doing mile repeats at that pace, and then draw out how long you're running at 5K pace until you can eventually run at 5K pace.
Which is kind of a solution to one of the questions we kind of brought up earlier with learning how to pace yourself and how do you pace yourself for a race. If you're doing these shorter distances at your goal 5K pace, ideally your body's going to start feeling, oh, I know what my goal pace now feels like in a 400, in an 800, then in a mile. And then when it's race day, you've run your goal pace multiple times. Maybe there are shorter distances. You haven't done a 5K at that pace yet, but your body's used to running at your goal pace.
Yeah, totally. Another question a lot of athletes ask me, or maybe this is something that they kind of get scared of, is that they haven't raced a 5K at the pace that they're going to race the 5K at on race day in training. But to that, and they're like, maybe I should do that, or I should do more and more. But once you taper, you get this huge benefit of really fresh legs and just feeling light and poppy in a way that you don't feel during training. So like doing 5x1K, doing that workout in the middle of heavy training, and then tapering off towards the end, which a taper just means decreasing intensity a little bit and mileage a little bit. So I would do that about 2 weeks out from the 5K, start decreasing the intensity and the volume that you're doing your workouts at. And then by race day, your legs are feeling really, really good, and you can run paces that, and keep up a pace that you weren't able to keep up in training just from that taper. Yeah,
tapers, that could be a whole other conversation.
Yeah, for sure.
But definitely want to know what a taper is. We could talk. I mean, she described it. Yeah, you're like slowing down your mileage and your speed, and you're giving your body a chance to rest and recover, ideally, so that you go into a race day feeling close to as 100% as possible. You're not fatigued. You're not like, oh man, I had a workout 2 days ago and I'm sore. You'll feel fresh. You'll almost be like itching to race.
Yeah.
Where you're like, I feel like I'm wasting energy right now.
Yeah.
That's what you want to feel, because then it's like, let that horse off at the race and you'll be good to go.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The other thing about this type of training too, the last thing that I would add, unless you have anything else to add, is doing some strides can really, really help you in 5K training. Because like I said, maybe you'll do some in and out 200s that are at 3K or mile race pace, but you don't want to be doing a ton of intervals that are really long or tough that are below 5K pace, because that's not what you're training for right now. You're training for the 5K. So training at 5K pace is a good thing to do. But doing some strides on your easy days, which are basically just probably at mile pace to 3K pace for 100 meters, and doing those after your easy runs can really be a good way to build in some speed. And I think it's kind of sneaky speed because you're not really taxing your body by doing that. So the way this looks is you'll do an easy run where, like we said, it's just conversational pace, and then you stop your easy run, you end that, and you can do some drills if that helps to warm up your legs a little bit more, and then you can go into strides and do about 100 meters or maybe 20 seconds of just running at a little bit faster of a pace. And I usually do 4 to 5 at the end of runs, and I do that 2 to 3 times a week.
Awesome. Yeah, that's a very common thing to do. Most runners are doing that. It's bonus mileage, it's bonus speed. That's not going to fatigue you the same amount as doing a full-blown workout.
Right.
That's why it's sneaky, because you like almost don't realize you're gaining speed, but you are slowly gaining speed.
Totally.
My variation, I would say doing strides after a run is the most common, but hot take.
Ooh.
For me, shout out Gabe.
Gabe.
He ran in college at the college I went to, and he talked about pickups, which are very similar to strides, but they take place in the run. So that's what I always do, because if you're anything like me, when you're done with your run, you kind of want to just be done with your run. Like, I don't want to run, finish, and then do all these things. Maybe if it's like before a more important race, or if that's just more the what would help you mentally be able to focus on, I just went easy, let's stop, call that a run, and now let's focus on that. That's where like doing it in stride form is probably better, and that's why most people do that. But for me, I like doing the pickups. So if I do an easy 4-mile run, then in the 4th mile, when I have like half a mile to go, I'll do 3 pickups. Same thing, I'll run at about mile pace, or right around that, and I'll run for 20 seconds, and then I'll slow it back. If I'm on a treadmill, I'll go back to easy pace, and then jog for a couple minutes, and then speed up, and then jog, and then speed up. And then I'm done. Then I just get off the treadmill, get off the road, wherever I am, and it's over.
Yeah, I actually did pickups today instead of strides in my run. Wow. So, yeah, I know. I changed it up because I usually do strides, but sometimes I do like the pickups, and I do think it's good to change it up for me a little bit, because I think that for me, the pickups help me learn how to change gears in a race, and so they kind of help with that kick at the end of the race. And I always like to, whether it's strides or pickups, this is a great time to practice some visualization as you are running, and just visualizing you running strong and smooth in a race, and especially at the end of the race too. So it's a great time for some visualization and also for building some speed.
Yeah. Which, again, visualization. We have so many things we could talk about.
I know, yeah.
It's like a book of things.
Right.
Because any one of these little side tangents, we could go on a full episode for. So don't forget to hit the subscribe button. And in the comment section, let us know what should we cover. Because we're going to cover everything. But if you want us to cover something that you care about, that's what we care about.
Yeah, exactly.
Moving on to the advanced.
Yeah, advanced.
So now we're getting into Rachel territory.
And you territory now, I would say. Yeah. Yeah, I would say so. I think when you are more of an advanced runner and you're really focused on the 5K, upping it to 2 workouts a week with a long run is also is a really great thing to do. So do all of the medium level training tips that we talked about, like the strides and everything like that, and the easy runs, but add in an extra workout. And then if you're handling that really well, adding in a long run can really help too. And I think a lot of people think, like, why do you need to run more than a 5K if you're just doing a 5K? But it's kind of like how I was talking about building the base of your house. You want that base to be really strong, and I think mileage just makes you a more efficient runner. So I think that building in some runs where you're running longer than a 5K in your run is going to help you, so that your legs are strong enough to run a 5K and they're not super, super tired at the end.
Exactly. Then you're 100% confident that you complete the race.
Yeah.
If you're doing a 10 to 12 mile long run, you've completed multiple 5Ks all in a row.
Definitely.
So then all you have to really work on, if you've built the endurance, then you just need to work on your speed.
Yeah.
And speed is more natural or not natural. I think endurance can be worked on over time. Like anyone can get a lot better at endurance. But speed often is what the hang up is for people.
Yeah.
So if you're trying to be more advanced and trying to, like, you've run that local 5K a million times, but now you want to win it.
Oh, yeah.
Now you need some more speed.
Yeah.
And that is why doing a long run helps so much.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to make your legs stronger. It's going to make you a more efficient runner. So, yeah, long runs are really, really good for 5K training, even though it might not seem like it.
Which, that is a good point. It strengthens your legs. Like, if you're on your feet for that long, over an hour, you know, like, you're building up strength, so then when you go into your workouts, your legs are like, oh, we only have to run like 2 or 3 miles?
Yeah, exactly.
Easy, we got this.
Yeah, and increase your mileage slowly, too, so you don't need to add, 12-mile long run if your longest run that you've ever done is like 6 miles. But you guys now are advanced, and you probably run the beginner and medium level of a 5K, so you might be getting into some longer mileage now.
Totally.
Yeah. So, yeah, I would say a 10 to 12 mile long run is solid for 5K training if at the more advanced level.
Yeah.
Yeah, so really all you need to do, add in that long run, add in another workout. So then you're doing 2 speed workouts a week. And really, I would say kind of do the same thing we were talking about with the medium effort training or medium level training, where you're starting off with more of a threshold effort base when you're at the very beginning of your 5K buildup, which I would say is similar. I would say 12 to 16 weeks, so 3 to 4 months if you're really trying to hit a good PR 5K. That's kind of how much you want to put into training, the length of time to be able to PR. So yeah, I'd start off with that threshold training for probably the first whole month of training, just trying to get some of those workouts in, build your base really strong, and then get more specific as you get closer and closer to that race.
Yeah. I remember what it looked like specifically for me last year in the 5K, what you had me doing. Mm-hmm. It'd be like Monday, easy run. Tuesday, first of the week workouts of the week, and it would be maybe like a threshold run where I'm running at threshold effort for a few miles with an easy warm-up and cool-down. Mm-hmm. Wednesday, easy. Thursday, a hard workout where it's like faster than 5K. It might even be like mile or faster speeds. Yeah. Then Friday's an off day. Saturday, easy. Sunday, long run.
Yeah.
And that's like bread and butter.
Yeah, totally. And I would say, too, even as you are getting closer and closer to the 5K and you're adding in more intensity and speed, be careful to listen to your body and don't add in too much speed, because those workouts are very, very intense and they are hard to recover from. So make sure that you're recovering, and if it's supposed to be a workout day but you're just not feeling 100%, or like your foot is bothering you or Achilles is bothering you or something, pay attention to those things. Or even if you're just tired, like pay attention to those things. And it's okay to maybe have a week where you're doing 2 workouts and then have a week where you just do 1 workout. And I would say that that's better. That's going to make it more sustainable for you. You'll end up running faster and not getting injured if you listen to those cues, and don't be so hard on yourself if you miss a workout because you were really, really tired one day.
Exactly. Yeah, the training only works if you are working.
Yeah, totally.
But if you're broken, then take a few steps back. It's okay. You're not going to lose that level of fitness over 2 or 3 days if something's like nagging you. And if that 2 or 3 days gets you healthy so that you can continue the plan, you're going to do great.
Worth it. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, definitely worth it. So, yeah, that is how I would handle it if you're a little bit tired. And I think most runners, distance runners, especially if you're putting in this type of work and you're this dedicated to it, you're not lazy. So don't think that it's just like laziness. If you are very, very tired and are like, man, I'm just not feeling this workout, you probably just need a couple extra days to recover, and then you'll be feeling like yourself again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think sometimes people push through it, and then it ends up they suffered in a workout, and then they're like, I'm not as fast as I thought I was, and just like they start doubting themselves, and it's just like this snowball effect where it's like, no, you're fine.
Yeah, exactly.
Just like take a break.
Yeah. I also, when you're in this advanced level of training, I would start thinking about adding down weeks into training as well. So doing maybe 2 to 3 weeks where you are doing 2 hard workouts a week and a long run as well, and then taking a week where you're not really doing that many intense workouts, or maybe the workouts that you are doing are lighter intensity and you're just kind of doing some in and out 200s, or a fartlek even, where it's just based off of time on your watch and not pace. So maybe you're doing a minute fast, a minute easy, but you're not even really looking at the pace that much. So I would add in that down week and decrease the intensity and decrease mileage a little bit on that week, so that you can recover and then really hit training hard for the next few weeks.
Yeah, great advice. They always say it's better to be 5-10% undertrained than 1% overtrained.
Yeah, exactly. Because if you're overtrained, you're going to feel terrible in the race, but if you're a little bit undertrained, you're probably not going to get injured and you'll feel good going into the race.
You'll probably just have a better kick.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, and like I said, most runners are not lazy, so it's okay to take days easy, to take your easy runs easy, to take rest days, and to listen to your body, and don't do that workout if you're not feeling it.
Totally.
Yeah.
In kind of closing this everything to do with 5K video, we wanted to give some specifics of like workouts that Rachel would prescribe, we've both run, that have worked for us in the past and that we've seen other runners use. So we'll just go through a list of those and maybe explain like kind of the why and the heart behind those workouts.
Yeah, that's great. So I would start off with threshold runs, like I was talking about. Those are workouts that you can, a pace that you could keep up for about an hour. So it's not a very, very intense level, but you're definitely working. You're not really able to talk in complete sentences. You can probably like say a few words to someone, but you're not trying to just have a conversation like this with them. So those I would do more towards the beginning of training, and those are great for building a base. After those two, sometimes I'll throw in some 200s or a minute fast, a minute easy, just to get some speed in my legs and some turnover, and that can really help at the beginning of training to start introducing some speed into training without doing full-on speed workouts.
Totally.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, threshold runs, we are both big fans of threshold runs.
Big
I
fans.
love threshold runs.
Yeah.
It's like she said, effort-wise, it's like comfortably uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. You're kind of like, it's called threshold because you're like right on the threshold of if you go a little too fast, you're going to burn out, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you want to go right up to that threshold line.
Yeah.
And that's the pace you're running at. And you should be able to run 45 to an hour at that pace. And we talked episodes ago about easy pace, how some people, one of the rookie mistakes of running is that you get too infatuated with your easy pace runs and then progressing and falsely thinking that's an indicator of fitness being gained.
Yeah.
When it's just you cheating your easy runs. I would say with threshold runs, it's the opposite, where that's what you should be focusing on. Like if you're running in January 6:30 pace for your threshold, and you can run 6:30 pace for an hour, and then by March you're running 6:15 pace for an hour, you can't fake that.
Yeah.
Like, if you're not fast enough, you just won't be able to run that.
Exactly.
So, the reason it's like so much more valuable to you is because you can only do it for so long, and if you're too slow, you just won't be able to physically accomplish it.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah. Yeah, so we love threshold runs, and there's a few different workouts within the threshold realm that you can do. One of Drew's favorite workouts, do you know what I'm about to say? Maybe. He loves mile repeats.
Oh, yeah.
And you can do mile repeats. We love mile repeats because you can do them at different effort levels. You could do them at threshold effort, and then you could also do them at 5K effort later on in training when you're trying to do some longer intervals and just take more rest in between. But threshold mile repeats are awesome too. So you don't need to just be doing like a 3 to 4 mile threshold run that is all put together. You could kind of do like a split threshold run where you're doing mile repeats. And I would say if you're truly running threshold effort, you should be able to do mile repeats with a minute to 90-second rest in between.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What I like so much about the mile repeats, one, I just like the mile distance. It seems like so uniform.
Yeah.
Especially like if you're running with a smartwatch and it's just like, oh, click, ding, I got that pace.
Yeah.
And you can go so much faster than your 5K pace.
Yeah.
So if your goal 5K pace is like 5:30 pace and you're running a 5:15 mile on repeat, you're kind of like, oh, I'm faster. Like I'm starting to catch up. I'm starting to get ahead of the fitness that I want to be. And in my mind, I get more hopeful knowing that I can run faster than 5K pace for mile repeats. That gives me confidence as a runner.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's so many ways that you can split up threshold runs. You could do just a straight threshold run where you're doing 3 to 4 miles. You could do mile repeats. You could do 2 to 3 by 1.5 miles. You could even go by minutes and just do 2 by 10 minute threshold runs. So there's lots of different ways that you can split it up if it's easier for you mentally or if you just want to do different workouts every week.
Totally.
Yeah.
But if you're not fans of the U.S. system, like the entire world is, then maybe some K repeats would be more up your alley.
Totally, yeah. And K repeats are just like mile repeats where you could run them at different effort levels. So one of my favorite 5K workouts is 5 to 6 by a K, but you're running it at 5K effort. But you could also run this workout at threshold effort and take a shorter rest between, but you're doing it at a little bit slower of a pace.
Yeah, I'd say a lot of runners I know that are in that advanced category do K workouts a lot.
Yeah.
I've been forced to do K workouts some. I personally hate to do that.
Drew does not.
I'm just like let's round it up to a mile or round it down to an 800. It
you
works.
Don't like the extra 200.
Yeah, I think it's just like a mental block for me. Like physically, I know that it would work.
Yeah.
I just don't like them at all.
Yeah. Hey,
but you like them. You do them a lot.
Yeah, and that's the other fun thing about training is if you don't like a workout, you don't have to do it. Like, Ks are a very specific, like, distance, and you don't have to do that to be good at running a 5K.
Yeah, as long as you are... There are some things you need to do.
Yeah,
like,
for sure.
you do need to work threshold effort. You do need to work faster than your goal pace effort.
Yeah.
But, like Rachel's saying, you can do it in your own way that you can wrap your mind and body around easier.
Exactly. Yeah. Some people are really, really good at just holding a pace for a really long time and they just like the long thresholds. And for some people, that's really hard for them and breaking it up works really well.
Yeah.
So I would say the best thing is probably a mix of both. And with the mile repeats too, you could even work in, once you're starting to get more into speed, you could work those down to 10K pace instead of threshold effort. And that's kind of a good way to bridge the gap so that you're not going from threshold effort down to 5K pace. And it's a big pace change. So I would say slowly decrease the paces as you go closer to your goal pace or goal race.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So that's kind of what the beginning of training should look like, is those threshold workouts. And then you can kind of have a couple weeks to bridge the gap between that and maybe do some 10K paced workouts where you're doing Ks or mile repeats at 10K pace and then get more into the 5K pace training.
Would you say there's any room for like 400s, 200s, or is that too short a distance?
Totally. No, I think there's definitely a place for some 400s and 200s. I think with 200s, they're so short that I would rather see athletes running those at a faster pace, like a 3K or mile pace. And I definitely think that there's room for doing that type of pace if it's shorter intervals in 5K training, because the more efficient at running you are, the better you're going to be able to run, the faster you're going to be able to run your 5K. And the way to build efficiency is by doing some speed. And so if you're able to run 6:30 pace kind of easily, then 7-minute pace feels a lot easier. So that's where I would say there's room for some 200s and maybe even 400s. I probably wouldn't go up to doing like 800s at mile pace, because then that's more specific for racing the mile than it is for the 5K, which is awesome if you're training to race the mile. But since we're talking about 5K training, maybe not ideal.
Yeah. And that's not even a bad idea to like work on your mile first and then do a 5K.
Yeah.
I feel like the 5K is an interesting distance because you could be like a really good miler going like, oh, if I get some more endurance, I could be fast. Or you could be like a 10K half marathon like expert and you're like, oh, like I have the endurance, maybe I could just like work on my speed a little bit. Totally. So it's like right in the middle there between a few other distances. So you could be doing speed stuff and like have a track season, for instance, if you're like a college athlete or high school athlete or something. But yeah, I would say for 200s, 400s, you don't need to be running them like you would be for working on your 800 or mile time.
Totally. I would also say along with that, I would always race down at the beginning of the season, meaning I would, if I was focused on the 5K or 3K, which were kind of like my events in college, I would race the mile or the 1500 at the start of the season. Even if I didn't really have awesome training for it, it was kind of like a rust buster and it helped me get my legs used to racing again. And once you run a mile, 5K pace feels super slow when you get into that race. So I would kind of do a mile and I wasn't really focused on PRing or running awesome in it. It was just kind of a way for my legs to get used to the turnover, and then I would race a 5K and feel awesome in it a couple weeks later.
Totally. Which, I don't know if this is controversial or not, but it goes back to what we said, where I personally think like gaining speed is more of like a natural ability that you can work on, but it's kind of like harder to gain speed than endurance that like almost anyone could gain over time. Mm-hmm. So if you're working on speed first, like you're saying, if you're working on your mile 1500 speed, then you just need to work on endurance, and that can like grow. Anyone can like grow that, but not everyone can get like a ton faster in a certain season. Yeah. In a short time frame.
Yeah, I would say that too. So yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, I think the next thing to talk about, because we've kind of talked about threshold workouts and then the intermediate workouts and maybe even doing some faster races, the really specific 5K workouts that I would be doing probably a month and a half to 2 weeks out from your 5K are going to be really specific 5K pace training. And you can do a couple speed workouts kind of mixed in there since you're doing 2 workouts a week, but I would really hit the 5K interval paces in that last kind of month and a half of training up to the race.
Yeah, which we've said this on all the different, from beginner to advanced, knowing the pace and not just mentally knowing it, but physically feeling that pace. If you're advanced, you should be able to feel your pace within 10 seconds or less.
Yeah.
You know, like you should, without a watch, go outside and run and be like, this is about 5:40 pace.
Totally.
Especially if it's close to race pace. It's one thing to be like, I'm running so slow that I have no idea what pace I'm running.
Yeah.
But if you're trying hard, you should be able to guesstimate pretty well. And the way that you get better with that guesstimation is by running the paces that you want to hit and be like, okay, I'm looking at my watch or I'm on a treadmill that's exact. And you can really lock into your goal pace.
Yeah.
The closer you get to race day.
Totally. So, yeah, some of the workouts that I like doing are 800s. So you could do 6 to 8 800s, which 6 800s is 3 miles. 8 is going to be 4 miles of work. So if you're kind of like a beginner advanced person, then maybe doing 6 is good. And then if you're even more advanced, adding an 8 where you're doing over a distance of a 5K in your workout, that can be really helpful for you as well. So I would maybe start off with 800s and having 2-minute rest in between everything, and doing those at 5K pace, and then slowly increase the distance that you're running. So maybe the next week you do Ks, which are 200 meters more, and you're just trying to hold the exact same pace, but for 200 meters more. And then start decreasing the rest in between. So maybe you started off at 2 minutes and then you're down to 90 seconds. So that's kind of how I would do it. And by the end, maybe you're doing workouts where you're doing 3 to 4 by mile at 5K pace, and you have 2 to 3 minute rest in between.
One of my personal favorites, I know I've said that a lot on
Yeah.
this podcast. I love the threshold work, mile repeats, and predictor runs.
Oh,
like
yeah,
indicator runs.
Yeah.
What is a good like indicator workout for a 5K? And
I was about to ask you, what's your favorite one? Because you are close to running and racing the 5Ks. So I feel like you've done even more indicator workouts for a 5K than I have.
Yeah, I would say one of them is doing 3 by a mile at goal pace
Yeah, I would say that's great.
with maybe a minute and a half, 2 minute rest. So it's
Yeah.
not a ton of rest, but enough where you're recovering. And I think we live at altitude, so in my mind, I'm like, man, if I can do that at altitude, then that's great. But if
that's funny to me because I'm like, if you can do that at altitude, you can go down to sea level and run
Yeah.
even faster. But it helps in his mind for
yeah,
sure.
I
It's a
will
mental
say,
thing.
spoiler alert, I underestimate how fast I am very commonly. Where I'll be like, oh, I'm at 18:30 5K, and she's like, you're at 18 flat, like because I mentally try to not think that we're at altitude, which I get that it slows you down, but I try to just be like, no, it's the same as sea level. So then when I get to sea level, I feel fast.
Yes.
So I just lie to myself. But
I think it's a
I'm
good-
not saying it's great. It's just what works for me. But I would say that workout, we've done that in the past, where you'll run 3 miles, take a 90-second to 2 minute rest at your goal pace. And if you can hit that feeling pretty comfortable at the end, like it should be hard because that's
Yeah.
like your goal pace. But if you can successfully accomplish it, you're probably only a taper and a few weeks away from doing that in real life.
Yeah, and that's a good point too, is the taper is huge, like I said before. So you don't want to be doing this workout like the week before the race. You want to be doing this about 2 weeks out, I feel like would be when you do your big indicator workout. Or like the hardest workout of the buildup, and then you start tapering down after that. So after that workout, I would reduce your long run, I would maybe reduce your easy runs by about a mile, and reduce the intensity of your workouts. So you still want to have some speed in your workouts, but maybe you're just doing 5 to 6 800s instead of the like 800s. So you're kind of like reducing the amount of work that you're doing, but still getting in some speed.
Totally.
Yeah.
And it's also important to realize that doing that workout, because it's so late in your training block, you shouldn't really be doing it fresh.
Yeah.
Like, you should kind of be sore. Probably a few days before this, you did a long run. And maybe even a couple days before this, you did another workout that was more like a threshold effort or something.
Yeah.
So you're not going into this very fresh. You should be kind of like running on tired, beat up legs
Yeah.
already. So, because someone could say, like, if you can only do that with 90-second rest, how are you going to do that for 3 miles in a row with no rest at all?
Yeah.
But it's like that taper makes a huge difference. You'll be fresh. You'll have your like race shoes, not your like trainers or flats on. Yeah, your legs just not being beat up will make a very big difference. And you'll have a couple weeks to both recover, do a few like touch-up workouts, and have that taper where going into the race you feel 100% like you did not when you did this workout.
Yeah, that's a really, really great point. So if you do a workout like this and it's a couple weeks away, and in your mind you're thinking, how could I possibly do that on race day? That's okay, and I have felt that way right before I race a really good race too.
That's super common for a lot of runners to
Oh,
be
yeah.
like, how could I run this whatever, half marathon, 5K, marathon? I haven't even come close to doing this many miles at this pace.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would also say the first week of the taper, usually I feel like trash. So the second week, then I start feeling good, and then I start feeling like, okay, I'm ready to run. I feel like my legs are coming around and I'm feeling good. But for some reason, and I don't really know the science behind it, but the first week of taper, sometimes I just feel sluggish and slow and just not awesome. And then I can really get in my head about things. So another important thing is just have people around you who can talk you down when you are feeling
Down.
like, yeah, you are down. So definitely definitely have people in your life like that.
Yeah, it's helpful.
Yeah.
Or just marry one.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what we did. Easy. So yeah, I think the last thing to talk about is the week leading up to the race. I would do a pre-race workout. Like if you're racing on a Saturday, usually I do mine on Wednesday. Some people do theirs on Thursday, but it's really just a light workout to get your legs turning over a little bit. Sometimes I'll do in and out 200s. Other times I'll do like a 1 to 2 mile threshold, and then do like a minute hard, a minute easy, something like that. What's your favorite pre-race workout to do?
As much as I generally don't love fartleks, I like doing fartleks in my build up, like the week out, or like even
The week of?
Yeah, the week of, like 4 or 5 days out, whatever. Where I'll go out and do like 2 minutes on, 2 minutes off, or maybe even like 2 minutes on, 1 minute off, or 1 minute on, 2 minutes off.
Yeah.
And just go for like a 25-minute run where I don't even care what the paces are. Like I'm focusing purely on effort. Like on the ons, I'll be running at maybe 5K pace.
Yeah.
And then the offs, I'll be completely jogging at easy pace, recovering fully.
Yeah, this is not hard. If you overdo this workout, you can really wreck yourself for the race. So if you're going out and doing a mile or a minute hard, a minute easy, and you're doing those at like mile or 800 pace, you are messing yourself up for the race. So don't do that. Just the point of this workout is to get your legs feeling like they have some pop in them for the race, but you are not trying to wear yourself out or prove anything to yourself right now. Prove it on race day.
Prove it on race day when you kick all their butts.
Yeah, exactly.
I think why I like the fartlek so much going into race day is normally, I think a lot of runners are like this. One of the nice things about running is it's very factual, it's very timed and measurable in a lot of different ways. So I like doing mile repeats where I can see my mile pace repeated and I know what a good mile time is, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But for a fartlek, I kind of don't really know how to gauge that fitness, which is good going into race day because then I can't psych myself out.
Yeah.
I don't know how fast I was going on the ons.
Yeah.
You know, like the offs were easy. So I end up finishing a 25, 30 minute workout going, I don't even know what that meant. I just like ran fast sometimes and rested sometimes.
Yeah.
And then I'm not overthinking, oh, I'm behind. Oh, that pace was too slow, blah, blah, blah. It was just like, no, I was on for a little bit, off for a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, and you could even do it with a stopwatch instead of a GPS watch too, if that helps you. Yeah, I guess that's what you do. So, yeah, it's perfect.
Now you know everything about the 5K.
Yeah, last thing, day before, I usually do a light run, 20 to 30 minutes, depending on what your mileage is, and then some strides after, and that gets my legs turning over.
Yeah, I would do something similar.
Yeah.
You're doing like less miles than a typical easy run.
Yeah.
If you're normally doing 5 miles for your easy days, it might be 2 or 3.
Yeah, exactly.
You're just like holding on, just like trust the process.
Yeah.
Because it feels so good on race day to go in like 95, 100% strong and be like, this is easy.
Yeah.
Or like, where did this energy come from? I feel like a different runner.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. So I think that's it. That's all my 5K tips. If you have questions, you can put them in the comments. The other thing to do is like and subscribe to this channel if you like the content, because we do free running content. So every single week we're doing a free podcast with hopefully some good running tips and advice. So subscribe if you are into that.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
See you next time.
See ya.